Hello and welcome to the Frontend Coffee Break, a space where we take a small pause from everyday life. We take a cup of Joe or whatever your poison is and talk about frontend. Today, as always, is Don Ricard. Hello and welcome again.
Chucho, a long time no see.
Long time no see, and this is episode, I don't know if I mentioned it, 42 already? Really? Is it
Already?
episode 42? Oh my goodness.
Second of the year, but yeah.
This, the second that we record for this year, but yeah, it's quite a bit of time. After a small pause, vacation pause, we're back on track. And today we have an interesting topic, which is becoming relevant this 2025, which is the date that we're recording and should be airing. This episode should be airing, and which basically is accessibility, and specifically. I'm going to ask you to if you know what it is. The European Accessibility Act. This is something that you might have heard if you're working in IT, or you should have heard if you're working in IT in Europe about the European Accessibility Act. I don't know it by heart, but Ricardo, could you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, I don't know it by heart either. I had to look up the definition. Basically, this act tries to enforce a set of guidelines, the WCAG, into the websites, so the end users they will have a better experience, right? Because up to this point, there was no enforcing. I mean, you could have no full website and no contrast and no nothing, and you were hurting your business, but businesses were not accountable. Like especially, I don't know, banks, airlines, commerce, things that the people really need to as a first sort of service. They were not accountable for this sort of compliance.
I think that here in Europe, the European Accessibility Act is basically, as you say, a norm, a law to enforce accessibility upon websites. And as far as I know, I think banks did need to enforce accessibility from quite a bit of time. And this is one of the reasons that accessibility is embedded in the company Incognizant and Centric, because we have several banks as clients, and because they need to follow one of the accessibility levels, if I'm not mistaken, level 2. This is why we've been working this from day 0. And I mean, for those who are not that familiar with accessibility, there are, as you mentioned, levels. There's basically 3 levels of accessibility. Each one includes the previous one, and they're of course named as level 1, 2, and 3.
The final boss being AAA compliant, right?
AAA compliant, precisely. It's AAA and AAA. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the Accessibility Act, the European Accessibility Act, aims to for websites that operate in Europe to achieve AA accessibility.
Correct.
So, as you say, to make it more, to make websites more inclusive, more basically that, more inclusive, more accessible to all European members, and of course anyone that visits them from outside. Is there any tips regarding on preparing for this?
Tips. So if you're starting now, maybe you're late, since this thing is going up in June. You should
June
have started
2025.
Exactly. You should have started earlier, because we all know what development is, and usually it takes time from finding your issues until you can actually ship the code to production. I think that there's some sort of a workaround. I've been told, at least from our client, that if you add like a banner to your website saying that you're not fully compliant by that date, you're sort of fine. You will not be charged on that day. But still, it's something you need to work on, definitely. So yeah, start now if you haven't.
Yep, as you say, if you're working with accessibility, you should start as early as possible. And specifically in this case, the goal, they're doing a little bit of construction here. The goal is June 2025 to have every major website. I mean, it doesn't have to be every single website, but I think that the requirement was for websites from corporations that have certain size.
You need to check
So
the requirements, see if your business applies. Maybe yours does not apply. So yeah, just double check yourself with official resources.
even if it doesn't apply, you should be.
That's also true. Well said. I mean, accessibility applies to everyone, but like in terms of legality, yeah. But definitely, accessibility should be part of our development and our a part of our lives, right? So it has to be there.
At least the most basic accessibility levels, which the single A, it's very easy to achieve. I think it's basically just best practices. We'll talk a little bit about what things you could do, but that would be like the minimum that you should actually worry about if you want to do web development. If you want to do good web development following good or best practices, you will naturally reach level A. But of course, if you do go for double A, that would be fantastic. And um, how do they measure? There's many tools that they can use to measure what the accessibility level.
Yeah.
But accessibility is not only about compliance, right?
There's a quote here in my notes that says, accessibility is not about compliance, it's about creating an inclusive digital experience for everyone. Yeah, I think developers don't realize how important this thing is. I mean, until you find somebody you know that has like a visual impairment or something that really they need to use keyboard navigation or use the text to speech, whatever it is, you don't realize how badly we've been coding websites from day one for years, right? And we really need to pay attention and say, hey, we need to let these users also experience it in the best possible way to make them. They already handicapped, they already have issues navigating the web. Let's just make it a little bit easier for them to get to the goal, whatever it is, buying something, getting information. So help everybody, right?
As you say, well, all of these are very valid use cases, and they should be taken into account. Whether your business sells something or just gives information out, it is very important, especially, for example, for governments or this kind of public information that needs to be known, to be accessible to every single one of the citizens. I'm really happy that to see that here in Spain, for example, they do have an initiative that they try to incorporate accessibility or to make Spain more accessible. I'm surprised to see, for example, the amount of blind people that you see walking around in the streets in the metro. It's fantastic because they've made the city, or they're aiming to make the city accessible for everyone, so that they don't depend on other people and they can live on their own. And this also applies to accessibility. And I love it that I've seen, for example, in the metro, a lot of people with their phones, blind people with their phones, and just listening into it, and the phone saying, "Okay, get on get on this train, get off at this. Now it's time to get off." On information like this, and they're just, you see the screen. There's nothing that you can make made out from, but they're just like clicking and navigating, and it's all because of um, the applications and potentially the websites or whatever they're using. They are accessible. It's
fantastic.
amazing.
I mean, not only the physical world, but also the digital world. We need to do that. So definitely. We said, why is it important? It must be done. So how do we do this? At least at Content Centric, what do we do here to achieve that?
Well, as I said, since some of our major clients are banks, and we've been working with them from the very beginning, accessibility has always been an important part of Cognizant Centric. And this is when I started working here. What's it been? I think this is the 11th year.
Wow.
I'm going for my 11th year. When I started working here, I was very surprised that from day one, it's like, oh, you're working at this, it needs to be accessible. And there were workshops constantly trying to talk about accessibility. There was like, you needed to understand what it was, and whatever you were doing, it needed to be accessible. So in Cognizant Centric, we have internal workshops on demand. We try to get a group of people and then do the workshop. And when people join the academy, which we should be having an academy this year, one of the workshops that they do is precisely the most basic accessibility workshop. And not only that, we do have an accessibility group, let's say, people that are worried about accessibility, and they're pushing the topic forward. And if you have any questions, you can always go to talk to them.
Now we shouldn't
And
like say that with one workshop you're already proficient in this
oh
topic.
no,
This is very complicated. This topic has so many dimensions, and you can focus on accessibility in the HTML, accessibility in the CSS, in the designs. There is so many things. Maybe that's why it has been always so hard for developers, because it's not just okay. Let me just learn, I don't know, one topic about performance in JavaScript, and then once you know what's the best methods to use them. No. This is super hard, and it depends on each website, its design, and yeah, I gotta say it's not easy.
no, accessibility is very hard. And the workshop that we have, it's usually an introduction to accessibility. It's like, hey, this is accessibility. This is why it's important, and these are the guidelines and things that you need to do in order to incorporate accessibility, in order to test it. I mean, the workshop is for the basics, and then there's a lot of investigation, and you learn a lot of while implementing. But they give you the basis so that you can continue growing in that direction. So it's important. And several years ago, we had back before we even had summits, we had this one workshop where we got an accessibility expert from an external accessibility expert to talk about what the experience was. And she came with a lot of different glasses. But there's the different you need to create accessibility to make the website accessible for everyone. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the most the large group of people that access the website that need accessibility are blind people, or people with some sort of blindness. And that's when I learned, like, there's blindness and blindness. You don't have to be 100% blind in order to need or to benefit from a good accessible website. And she came with different glasses that had different um, simulated different potential issues that you could have, like a narrow vision that you can see perfectly well, but in a very narrow way, or you see blurry. And we were just passing the glasses, testing it, and seeing how the page behaved with that. It was quite interesting and quite eye-opening. Well, ironically,
Like oh no, no pun intended, but like a reality check, not to see exactly how these people like put them in yourself in his them shoes. So definitely important. So in terms of development, when do you start caring about accessibility? This is something that we can do at the end, something we do at the beginning. What's the approach here?
the interesting thing, and this is something that the developers need to know, is as I mentioned before, incorporating accessibility. It's something that you can do without putting too much of an effort. The most basic accessibility, you can do it from day one. First of all, if you do want to support accessibility, you should do it from day one. You should start building accessible websites. What does this mean? For example, using semantic HTML. That would be one of the most basic things. And I love it because we use divs, and only divs, and that's it. And no. There's a lot of things that you can do from day one. Is there anything else that you would recommend, for example,
No.
for
I
people
mean,
to?
the semantics goes a long way. Like the other day, I was watching this video on accessibility, and they were just saying, just please use all the semantics you can for everything, right? From the classic heading sections, whatever navigations, but also everything. The inputs. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just using the out of the box like elements that make semantic sense. It already tells a lot of information to the end user, right? Like if this is a heading, they already know it's a heading. If you're using like, I know, it's a link, don't use a button with an on click. It's an anchor link. Use an A tag, right? So because then they know exactly this is a link that goes somewhere else. Use as much like let's say like attributes as possible. If you want to open something in a new tab, just use the target blank. Don't use like an on click and then window new. Come on, right? Don't reinvent and be like as pure HTML as possible. I don't know how to say it, but be pure in HTML.
Yeah, but the accessibility starts from that point. HTML, you have to use, so you should be using semantic HTML. It's been years since HTML5 has been available, and one of the biggest improvements that it brought with it was semantic HTML. Now we have a nav element, which used to be a div ID nav, a main element, which used to be a div ID main, a sidebar. There's a lot of semantic tags already. And these semantic tags will give some of the tools that are used, some of the assistive tools to use, a good idea of what they are. They will know if they need to ignore it. They will know if they need to pay attention to it. I mean, there's a lot of things that just using semantic tags, you will make your site way more accessible, and it's really not an additional effort. You do need
Sometimes
to learn.
it's even cheaper. Like one of the most like at least how to say it, like breakthrough elements that they released in the recent time is dialogue element. Like for creating models and dialogues. Now you can just have a dialogue element, and that already has the focus trap, has the announcement that this is a dialogue, has everything that you previously had to do manually if you knew how to do it, because most of the old websites they don't care. They open a model and then maybe it's not focus trap, maybe the background is not inert. All the things that you need to do to actually make a model accessible, it's out of the box with a new dialogue element, and it's fantastic. So please use it.
So those for example, XML you start from scratch, you start from there and move forward. And the next step would be to get to know accessible best practices, or how to make things that are common in a website accessible. Like for example, a navigation menu or a select menu, using semantic tags, first step. But then there's a lot of things that you can do, which are very simple, like adding ARIA labels. Sometimes just adding ARIA labels should be enough. And then there's if you want to work on a menu, there's already, if you go to the WC3 page, they already give you examples. Hey, you want to make a menu? Here's the basics that you need to take into account. Hey, you want to do this? Here you go. Hey, you want to do that? Here you go. It gives you a lot of examples, with HTML and JavaScript already, showing you what you need to do. And of course, it's not only about following the guidelines that they give you, but you should also do a little bit of testing. Maybe as a developer, if you have a big enough team and you can give that to the QAs, perfect. But you as a developer, there's a few things that you can follow, like for example, tab navigation, or depending if you're in an Apple environment, using a voiceover, which is I think, if I'm not mistaken, a tool that people that use Mac use mainly. If you have Windows, I think it's Shark.
You have
what's the name of
JAWS, you have MBDA,
JAWS,
different of like tools, like Sharks. But you gotta do that, and especially when the UI is a little bit like fancy. When these designers come to you and they put this, I don't know, maybe you have a dashboard with numbers, and then the numbers in the corner, but then the label is far away, and then of course it's not correct that you have to use, as you said, ARIA labels to make sure, when the person taps into the number, they don't not only read the number, but they read, okay, what is this? They are talking about kilometers, miles, where is it, right? So definitely give context, try it out. And I think it requires a lot of testing. You said a little bit, but I think it requires a lot of testing, like not only for the developer, then the QA, maybe perhaps a third party, like expert audit down the line to reevaluate if we did this correctly. Because sometimes it's not just, thinking, okay, I have done my HTML semantics, everything seems to be like accessible, but does it make sense? Like again, you said before tabbing navigation, does it really read what needs to be read, like in that correct order? Or if you tap on a box that is just a number, is it really giving you the correct information? Do you need something else? And sometimes you need to add more text that it's not visible to you, but it's visible to the screen reader to understand, okay, this box is about this thing, right?
Yes. And I just reminded you just remind me that one of the things that I've seen people, blind people or people that need accessibility, use is that they listen to messages with increased speed. I was just remember, because there's we sometimes get you're talking too fast, you're talking too slow, and
am I talking too fast?
No, you are not.
Yes,
That's what
yes,
I was.
I am.
What I was
Yes, I am.
thinking.
I know I am. I'm sorry, guys.
No.
Talking about, but this is also true, like accessibility in media, like something as trivial as adding subtitles to your YouTube videos. Like that's already an accessible thing that you have to do for your website. You have to turn on or able to have subtitles. Thankfully, YouTube gives them for free. But if you use your own hosted video solution, you must have subtitles. Otherwise, you're not compliant.
And you should be using third party or not use it at all. So now that you're mentioning that you should have subtitles in videos, what other things that you need? What other recommendations or things you need to do to
Glad you asked, Chucho. Glad you asked, because I asked the same thing to Google Gemini. Yes, you didn't know. So let's ask AI. On a funny note, to prepare this episode, I asked Gemini, give me give me a research on the act, and they have this feature called research actually, which the
nice.
AI goes to all the websites it finds. Oh, sorry. If you're watching the video, I'm sorry, the balloons that just exploded. Okay, back again. So Google Gemini now has this feature where it can do research for you, and it goes to a bunch of websites, it learns, and then it continues to iterate over that what he has learned, and it creates a big fat document with all the information. So this, what I'm going to read you right now, is part of this research that Gemini did. Of course, we validated it, but it makes sense. First of all, something you already said a few minutes ago, alt text for images, right? If you have an image that needs to have some context, it's not decorative, please add an alt so people can know, okay, this is an image of a dog jumping through a fence, whatever. That's important and easy to do, right? Yes. You already mentioned the second bullet point I have here, keyboard navigation. Not easy, not trivial when you're talking about, I don't know, carousels. These are super hard. Like carousels are a nightmare. But try to use keyboard navigation. See if your content jumps in the correct order. Be careful with, moving stuff with CSS, and try to be as semantic as possible when it comes to ordering your HTML. So it makes sense when you tap. That's important.
And that's super easy to test.
Yes, just use a keyword. You don't need anything else. Use a keyword. What else we have here? Headings, also important, right? I mean, we're back to this semantics, but we've all seen people use the wrong H1, H2, H3 on different places, and you have to know what you're doing. It doesn't mean like you only have one H1 per page, but you can have them inside heading sections. Anyway, HTML semantics, but use headings in the correct way. Don't use paragraph if it's a heading. Don't use a div. Just use, again, going back to semantics, right?
And it improves SEO.
Exactly. Also, you get bumped into the search results or whatever you're doing. DuckDuckGo. Fourth bullet point, but that's maybe applies to designers, not just developers. Color contrast. It's very easy to test with the DevTools. You can have maybe a div with a background and a color for the text. You go to the DevTools and it will tell you what level of accessibility you're complying with. And please try to be AA. And if you're not, go back to your designers and say, hey, you're not complying with AA. We need to change the color palette or the color branding to comply. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something that is quite easy to test. There's a lot of tools for accessibility for the website, for the browser. And there's some of them almost basically give you, hey, this doesn't have enough contrast. And even if you say, hey, I didn't design it, depending on how close you are to the designer team, you can always say, hey, I found this, because these things might slip their mind.
Absolutely, yeah, it happens, and we're all human. And the last one I have here is forms. Again, forms is a tricky one, because forms, designers want to have so pretty forms, fancy forms with checkboxes that are SVG animations and such. And you gotta, if you don't know how to do them, you have to tell them, hey, we gotta go to the basics. We gotta go to regular checkboxes, regular dropdowns, because maybe using a custom one, it's very hard to do accessible, and you have to go back to it. And I'm very sorry, but that's how it is. On the bright side, the CSS group, they're working on allowing us developers to style these form elements like dropdowns, custom dropdowns. They're doing that, but yeah, make sure if you're using a custom element, make it accessible or go back to the basics.
And as you say, you can add all these things, you can follow all good practices, but in the end, as a developer, you should try to follow these things, but it's always testing that needs to be done. If you have the QA team, that's fantastic. They can take care of that. Or at least you could hire, if you have the possibility of hiring a third party, that's also to make an audit. That's also good. And the funny thing is that every time that I've worked with it, they always find something that you miss completely.
For sure,
it's like, what?
For sure.
Really need that? It's like, is this really not working? So if the company that you're working with can afford it, that should be something that you do. So, I mean, we've been doing accessibility since we joined Cognizant and Centric. I had some interesting projects before Cognizant and Centric that's for me, that was the introduction to accessibility, to when I understood it. If we have time, I'll talk a little bit about that. But in your experience, in all these years that you've been working, doing websites and such, what would you say is the hardest part when developing for accessible websites?
I think I already mentioned, and the whole carousel thing, it's a nightmare. Like making carousels accessible. it has multiple dimensions, right? You have the keyboard navigation. You have to somehow be able to go through each of the slides, be able to navigate back and forth, be able to let the machine tell you in what the slide I'm in, how many slides are available, then read the content of each slide, be able to also get out of the carousel and continue through the page. For me, that's very hard. And that's why I always try to push for go to a like already proven maybe library that's out there, open source, that you can just plug and play, rather than trying to code from scratch, because it's for me this is very, very hard. And the second one I have is announcing stuff. I know we have the role, what is it? Role, I forgot, role presentation, role something, role alert, role, I don't know. There's area roles to see, I forgot already, to actually announce content. It's hard because on the UI, when you see like, I don't know, a toast or something appear on the website, like you're saving, it says save complete. That needs to be announced. I mean, it's easy if you have eyes because you see the message in red in the corner, but if you are not using your eyes, you have to announce to the user these things are happening. And sometimes it's very hard to do that with JavaScript. Okay, what elements do I use? How do I test this? For me, it's hard. How about you, Chucho?
Well, I mean, one of the hardest things that I encountered when working as a developer was testing your part as a developer before taking it to QA. Because if you don't test anything and you just send it directly to QA, there's always a possibility that it's going to come back to you and it's just a waste of time. One of the projects that I was in, one of the bank projects, we had to test for Android and for iPhone. We had to test for desktop and for mobile. We had to test for tablets, and it was a nightmare. Because not everything works everywhere, and sometimes it's horrible because it's like, okay, I simply can't make it work when I'm doing the testing, and basically you just try to do it the best way that you can, but you need to test all the basics at least, and that was, I think, one of the hardest things that you should do. And I think that sometimes figuring out the other difficulty. I remember this many years ago, to figuring out what would be the best structure or recommended accessible structure to do something. I think that I was discussing with one of our colleagues regarding they were working on it wasn't exactly a navigation menu, but it was some sort of menu, and they were saying, "Oh, what should this be?" Because there's several options that this thing could be, and it's like, okay, so which of the different potential options is the best one for it? And figuring out sometimes which one to use can be quite challenging. But in the end, there's a lot of things that you learned through experience. There's now, fortunately, there's a lot of documentation that you can read, a lot of new proven solutions that you can use. So it's important to learn about the topic, so that, because it's always easier to do it from the first time than to implement it backwards, because there's a lot of web development is complex, and if you try to change something once you're done, you end up changing or breaking things or changing a lot of things. That would be it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on the structure. It's not easy sometimes, especially you guys now are asking ChatGPT and Gemini to generate code for you. It's not hard. It's hard. It's hard. Like what is actual structure? What makes most sense? And the whole area labels with inputs, and okay, the label, and you link that to that and the ID, and then what do you do? Did you? And there's so many tricks as well. It's like things like, okay, if you don't want this to be read, just leave the alt attribute present but empty, and things that you need to learn all the time. It's, man, I really like, I respect a lot the experts on accessibility, because there's so much knowledge and it changes from device to device, from OS to OS, and it's a nightmare. Not a sponsor, but what we use at the project is Browser Stack, which is a great like paid solution to test multiple devices, real devices, quickly from your same machine. So yeah, Browser Stack.
I remember now. I'm looking for it as we speak, because now that you were mentioning a little bit about this, I remember that there was like, most likely if you work on a website, you are already, if you're doing following best practice and such, most likely you're already supporting single A, but potentially there's very few things that you need to do to support double A. I remember that when last year, when we knew that the European Act was coming and we were starting to prepare, there was a list of the most common things that websites, accessibility wise, lacked, and I think that one of them was, I'm trying to figure out which one it is, but for example, one of them is, and I'm reading it from here, the lack of alternative text, the alt text in images. And that's one of the most common things, that people just put images without alternative text. Or, and I love this one, the color contrast, which it's in a way understandable because they don't test it. But it was like there were a few things that were super simple to solve, and it would be like it will solve a lot of the issues, or the issues in most of the websites. And if only it had been done from the beginning, they wouldn't have that
Yeah,
problem.
man.
Anyhow,
And color contrast is like it's just a number. It's just a math algorithm or whatever. So just moving it slightly to the left or to the right of the color palette, you're very fine. So it's not that much. And alt text for sure, man. It's just content editors. If you upload an image, just describe the image. I mean, it's not a big deal. And now with the AI tools, you can also do that. I mean, I think there are tools and then like services where you upload the image and it will try to figure out what it is, so you can have less time spent on writing one sentence on what the doc is doing. Come on, not that hard. So yeah.
well, so I think that we can agree that doing accessibility is not it's not
Trivial.
A trivial task. It's not that simple, but it's really also not that highly complicated to do the most basic things. I mean, if the most common issue is that inappropriate alternative text or images,
Right.
or lack
Yeah.
of, and poor contrast, or heading hierarchies, I mean, these are things that you should easily solve. And most likely, if you're doing, as I said, following best practices, you already have quite a bit of an accessible site. The important thing is test and make sure that you make your sites accessible for everyone.
And with that,
And with that, we reached the end of today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you want to share with us, what is your experience with accessibility? I mean, it would be nice to read about that. And I hope that you have quite a nice day.
see you in the
Thank you
next
very much.
Frontend Coffee
Thank you,
Break.
Ricardo. See you then. Bye bye.